Well, good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, can I thank again our emergency services, our power crews and road crews who are doing phenomenal work right around our state. It's very difficult and dangerous work at times, particularly with the conditions. We're still seeing warnings that will be appearing over the coming days. So we want to acknowledge the important work of our emergency responders as we go through this event. Thank you to the community for responding so well. We are seeing flood and storm impacts right around our state, and Tasmanians have really stepped up to the plate, providing support for their neighbours, for their family members and loved ones in a whole range of different ways. The Premier has been in the north of the state today, meeting with crews and volunteers up there, and I've been in the Derwent Valley this morning, and want to acknowledge all of the work from our partners in emergency services, but across civil society, people like the Red Cross, local government and others who've been providing important services as we work through this difficult event. There are now, we are now seeing impacts to businesses and homes in particular areas of flooding, and the emergency services will be providing an important update in this area. I want to stress to the community that our crews are working as hard as they can to ensure that services are put back on for communities, but we acknowledge that that is taking some time. Overnight we've sadly had 2 workers who've been injured while they've been undertaking their work, and it's our hearts go out to them and their loved ones, and it's a reminder to our community that we have people doing very difficult work in very trying conditions, and we appreciate the community's understanding as we work through that. It also demonstrates why it's so important that we follow the warnings from emergency services. If the road is closed or emergency services are providing you information and instructions, please follow those warnings, particularly when it comes to our roads. If there is flood water on the road, please turn around. If it's flooded, forget it. We want our community to follow those warnings. As well, it's important to stay updated. So download the Tas Alert app. It's your single source of truth for what you need to do in an emergency, and it will provide notifications for areas relevant to you. So with that, I'll pass over to our emergency services.
Okay. Sorry, could you please introduce yourself to start?
Yeah. Okay, good afternoon. Simon Lewis here, Senior Meteorologist with the Bureau of Meteorology. Now, we've clearly seen very destructive weather conditions over the last 24 to 48 hours, including widespread destructive wind gusts across the north and the west of the state overnight last night. Those included gusts of over 110 kilometres per hour at both Burnie and Devonport, and notably we had record wind gusts for Launceston Airport of 130 kilometres per hour and at King Island of 157 kilometres per hour. Fortunately, the strongest gusts and the windiest conditions have now passed, but we're not completely out of the woods. So we are starting to see winds and gustiness ease across the state today, but we do have a severe weather warning for early hours of tomorrow morning, just for the lee slopes of the western tiers. So that could affect places like Mole Creek, where they could see damaging wind gusts just re-intensify for a period overnight. Other than that, we're obviously very concerned about the flooding. We've had significant rainfall accumulations over the last 6 to 7 days across many parts of the state. The most significant flooding is occurring in the Derwent River catchment, where we're currently forecasting record levels just below Meadowbank Dam, and that's translating to a flood peak expected near the major flood level this evening about Macquarie Plains. Fortunately, further downstream at New Norfolk, it doesn't look as though we'll see quite such significant flooding, with the flood forecast for there currently expected to remain minor. We also do have flood warnings across many other flood catchments across the state, including moderate flooding for the Mersey, the Meander, the South Esk and the North Esk, and minor flood warnings current for the Macquarie River and the Forth River.
How bad are the conditions expected to peak in the Macquarie Plains area tonight?
So we're expecting the flood, the river level to reach about 6.7 metres, so that's right on the major flood level for that river catchment, the Macquarie Plains.
And what have been the highest rainfalls over the last 24 hours?
So we've seen sort of 40 to 60 millimetres in the west of the state, and yeah, that's really just contributed. We haven't really seen super significant single day totals. It's really over the last 6 to 7 days where we've seen accumulated falls of 200 to 300 millimetres across that part of the catchment that's led to this flooding.
Are you expecting more rain to continue moving down over the next few days and for flood levels to remain quite high?
So for most of those catchments, the flood levels are peaking today or later today. We will see an easing in the rainfall over the next 24 to 48 hours, particularly much lighter totals expected during Tuesday. However, as we head into Wednesday and later on in the week, we will see some moderate rainfall redeveloping in the west, in particular, of the state. So that could slow the rate at which the rivers drop, but that's much more moderate rainfall than what we've seen so far. So we're not expecting that to lead to, really prolonged high peaks or new flood peaks.
We've got a significant number of houses still out of power. What are you looking at in terms of damaging winds around the state?
So as I said, we're expecting it to ease quite a bit during tomorrow, with the exception of that area just in the lee of the Western Tiers, which could see some damaging gusts overnight tonight. But generally tomorrow we should see a lot less wind around. From Wednesday we'll start to see northwesterly winds increasing. It'll be fresh and gusty, but absolutely nothing like we've seen over the last 2 or 3 days. So just fresh and gusty winds continuing from Wednesday probably through to the next cold front, which is expected to cross Friday night. Now that cold front is nowhere near as strong as the ones we've seen the last couple of, Friday night and last night, so not expecting those sorts of extremely destructive winds to reoccur at this point.
And the rainfall has been a little bit on and off. Does that mean that there's a higher chance people could get caught out by a sudden river rise?
Certainly the rainfall is becoming more showery, so that means the totals are less widespread across the catchment. And we haven't seen, we had thunderstorms last night, which can lead to some really locally intense falls, which can lead to some of those like flash flood type situations. We're not expecting thunderstorms for the next couple of days, but we will be keeping an eye on how that develops towards later in the week and towards the weekend.
Is there how great is the risk of flash floods?
It's decreased now that those heavier falls have sort of eased off, and rainfall totals today have just been sort of 5 to 10 mils, so not too significant. But as I said, we'll just be keeping an eye on how this next front develops later in the week.
Just to confirm on warnings, did you say you're not expecting to have to upgrade any of those warnings that are currently in place?
We always monitor the warnings extremely carefully, and so at this stage it's looking like we've got most of the rainfall in the catchments that would lead to significant changes to the warnings, but as always we're monitoring those river levels, and if we see anything we'll be updating the warnings. One other thing I should mention, it's quite cold at the moment. We've got snow lines down to around 500 metres, so there's a bushwalkers alert out. I know there's people out in the backcountry, and it's quite cold and there's quite a bit of snow around. We're expecting that snow line to stay low through till about this evening, and then that will go up rapidly overnight tonight, so much warmer conditions during the middle part of the week.
And that can contribute to the river levels as well, can't it?
Yeah, so the snow is a bit of a double-edged sword. It means that at the moment, some of that rainfall about the higher ground will have been captured as snow. That will probably melt during the week, and so that can help to prolong the enhanced flows in the river catchments.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
SES?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mick Lowe, Executive Director, SES. So we've seen another wild night of weather across the state, with extensive destruction, in particular in the north of the state this time, and in around the Greater Launceston area. SES responded to 347 requests for assistance last night, and that's coming off a busy week that's seen around 760 requests for assistance since Tuesday, with this prolonged weather event that we've been working through. The damage and destruction we saw last night was wind driven primarily, broken windows, broken roofs, a lot of downed trees, and there's a lot of debris out there, so we do ask everyone to continue to remain safe. We're also monitoring minor and moderate flooding across the state, in particular the river systems in the north. There are currently 20 warnings that are in place, with one emergency warning to evacuate, which is in the Derwent River in around the Meadowbank area. We're continuing to monitor these conditions. Overnight we are expecting some damaging winds tonight. We're continuing to work through the assistance, so work through the request for assistance that we have at the moment. And our crews are doing an amazing job and continue to do so. They're obviously fairly fatigued at this point after several days of action, and we're rotating those crews to make sure that they're looking after themselves. We ask the community continue to monitor the alerts and the warnings on the Tas Alert website or the Tas Alert app to maintain awareness of what the conditions are in and around those. Conditions are changing a little bit. There will be changes to warnings, so please continue to monitor the conditions and behave in an appropriate manner to the conditions, and ensure that you're making good decisions and staying safe.
Do you know how many SES workers are currently out there helping people?
I think we've had almost every SES member that are on our books that have been in and around helping the community over the past week. In particular, we're trying to rotate those crews so that we've got some rest there and managing the fatigue of those crews. So it's about 700 fantastic volunteers across the state that have been reacting over the past week.
Were the
How
two
many-
injured workers SES workers?
No, they weren't.
Can you provide more details on those injuries at all?
They weren't SES workers.
It's
Sorry.
Felix, will you be right to answer some more questions? Okay, great.
Just on the isolated communities in the Derwent Valley, what's the situation around there, Westaway and so on? Have you received any calls for assistance from people in those communities?
Yeah, so there's a fair bit of work that went into the preparation for that event over the past 24 hours, or in fact the past 48 hours. We've tried to get to door knock out to those areas in conjunction with Tasmanian Police and Tasmanian Fire Service. Been door knocking those areas to make people aware of the dangers that may come as part of the flooding. We've asked a majority of those people in those impacted areas that are either going to be inundated or impacted by those flood waters to evacuate, and we continue to work with the community to monitor those conditions. There will be areas that are going to be isolated over the next 24 to 48 hours, and we ask people make informed decisions and understand the danger in and around the areas that they're going to be living or working in.
How many more assistance requests are you expected over the coming days?
We're hoping to see that there's going to be a bit of a drop in the request for assistance overnight. Fingers crossed that we get a little bit of a break in the weather to rest our crews, and also obviously manage the backlog of requests for assistance that we're triaging at the moment.
What's the situation with the Meadowbank Dam? Do you expect to have further releases from that reserve today?
Yeah, so it's an automated system at the moment. That's factored into the flood modelling that was covered by the Bureau earlier. So again, we're going to see those peaks of that water flow tonight, up to around 2000 through to midnight, down through that river system.
The evacuation centres in New Norfolk, they didn't have a heap of traffic overnight. Have they had any more now since those flood warnings were increased earlier today for the Derwent Valley? No, the last thing I heard, there was 9 registrations in around that evacuation centre. A majority of those had been from the caravan park previously, that had been previously evacuated by the local council as a precautionary measure. My understanding is the majority of people that have evacuated have probably moved to family and friends in around the area, which is more than reasonable.
And how has the SES found the behaviour of the community? Have communities been willing to listen and get out of impacted areas, or is the SES concerned by reports that some people have been embarking on bushwalks? Yeah, look, we just ask that people really monitor the conditions, act in a safe way. For the most part, the community have been fantastic. They've been receptive to the information that we've been pushing out. And what we do ask is those that are in those impacted areas, if you do have the opportunity, obviously we're requesting that you do evacuate so you don't put yourselves or anyone else at risk.
The New Norfolk Mayor said she heard reports of some people playing in the flood waters or going swimming. How dangerous is behaviour like that if it's true? Yeah, look, floodwaters are very, very dangerous. We ask anyone to please do not
play or walk or drive through floodwaters. It is a serious situation. The last thing we want to see is a loss of life through people just not behaving or not assessing the risk correctly.
Yeah, and how would you assess the level of risk to people's lives at the moment? And I mean, we heard from BOM that the risk of flash flooding seems relatively low.
Yeah, look, just stay away from floodwaters. This is what we're encouraging. So there are going to be areas that become inundated over the next 24 hours, in particular those peaks through tonight. Stay away from floodwaters, stay safe. If you need assistance, call 132 500, or if it's life-threatening, please call 000.
There was a media report this morning that a woman was stranded in the Derwent Valley and in need of dialysis. Do you have an update on that situation?
So I'm not tracking that situation.
With the Telstra network outages, what kind of challenges does that pose working in some areas of the state?
Yeah, obviously, if there is a phone outage, it does make it difficult for people to request assistance. We try and maintain awareness of where those outages are, and have a bit more of a presence in around those areas so that we can be aware of what the situation is, and working with our emergency management partners, in particular Tasmanian Police, to ensure that we're reaching out to those that potentially could be in danger.
And what's your advice to people that maybe can't access the TAS Alerts page because they don't have phone or internet connection?
We ask them to remain in a safe location. If you think you're in danger and you're able to evacuate, do so, and obviously move to high ground. But we do ask everyone to be absolutely as cognizant of the danger and the emerging situation as they can.
Do you have an idea of the number of people in the Derwent Valley who have chosen not to evacuate?
I don't have those figures in front of me at the moment.
And we've heard in the past there's been issues around communicating to residents when they do need to evacuate. Are you confident that those communication channels are where they need to be in the case that you do need an emergency evacuation?
Yeah, so we have already issued that emergency evacuation. So and we put a lot of effort into reaching out to the community yesterday so that those people who were going to be endangered, if we thought their property was going to be either isolated or inundated, they were the people that we contacted yesterday. So hopefully they've been able to make an informed decision.
Great, thanks very
No
much,
worries.
Nick.
Thanks, Police.
Jason Elmer, Commander of Southern District with Tasmania Police. So from a police perspective, in the 24 hours to 8 a.m. this morning, we attended around 585 incidents statewide. Not all of those associated with the current weather, but a significant amount certainly were in relation to storm issues and trees across road and damage issues. Our focus is in relation to road closures and evacuations. In respect to road closures, there's currently around 50 roads closed across the state, and our evacuation focus is clearly in the Derwent Valley. We have an increased police presence in the Derwent Valley with a forward command post established at the New Norfolk Police Station to coordinate evacuation activities in the Derwent Valley. We were assisted last night by a large number of TFS and SES volunteers and sworn police officers who managed to door knock quite a number of houses last night and provide some advice around evacuation. Those activities continue today in anticipation of the continuing issues with flooding of certain areas. So we've got quite a number of people on the ground engaged in those evacuation activities. Our focus is community safety. We want to make sure that the community are safe, and we just urge people to assist us with that by not entering floodwaters, by not disobeying road close signs, and keeping up to date with information. The TAS Alert website is the official source of information in relation to community warnings, and they can also be obtained from the Tasmania Police website. ABC Local Radio as well also issue the alerts as well. So we just ask the community to stay informed, to heed the advice in relation to road closures and evacuations. If you don't need to be in those areas, please don't be there. Please don't be on those roads. If you are driving on the roads in hazardous conditions, just remember your safety, remember your distance between the vehicle that you're driving, the vehicle in front of you, headlights on, slow down and be cautious with your driving. So community safety is paramount important to us.
And how have you found the behaviour of the community? Have they been obeying those road closures?
Yeah, as a whole, we've been really happy with people making sensible decisions and not entering these road closed areas and floodwaters. So we've been pleased with the response so far.
And how is your workforce going in terms of fatigue, given that it's been a couple of days now? Have you got the staff you need to be able to rotate those crews?
Yeah, we do. So we're constantly looking at our rostering and bringing people in. But at this point in time, we've forecast out that we'll need people on the ground for a number of days to come, and we're working through that planning process.
How many officers do you have deployed in the north and the south of the state?
In the south of the state, particularly in relation to the Derwent Valley, so we have extra resources in the Derwent Valley. We've got up to 20 police officers up the Derwent Valley. I couldn't tell you the resources in the north of the state at this point.
Is it disappointing to hear there has been 2 people that have suffered injuries, and are they from Tas Police?
No, they weren't from Tasmania Police, and certainly our thoughts go with those 2 workers who were injured, assisting with the current weather event, and we certainly wish them a very speedy recovery.
Do you know who were they with?
I believe they may have been state growth or contractors for state growth.
And moving forward, do you hope that the number of road closures will continue to go down?
We'll continue to monitor that over the coming days, but I think as we've heard from the Bureau and from the SES, we're expecting conditions like this for a few days to come yet. So we'll just continue to monitor that and close roads and open roads when appropriate.
Tes Networks?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ben Duffy, fault lead from Tes Networks. Obviously, overnight we faced unprecedented number of outages across the state. To give some background, at the height of the storm activity last night, we saw about 47,000 customers impacted across the state, and that was mainly around the north and northwest. To give us some indication, north we have currently about 21,000 customers impacted by that outages up there. The south we're looking at about 1,033, and in the northwest is around 13,000. So it's clear that the north and northwest have been severely impacted. From an asset perspective, we've seen extensive damage to power lines, wires down, poles down, and our crews are working tirelessly today to assess that damage and restore where we can. We will see significant delays in restoration. Obviously, we're working very hard with local government to provide places of safety throughout the state. At the moment, we have around 12 community centres available to those members of the community that are impacted. I'd strongly advise all of our customers to refer to our Tes Networks website for outage information.
Oh, great. Okay, so yeah.
Is that roughly 35,000 now still without power?
Yeah, at present we're around 35 to 37,000.
And what have been some of the key contributors to those power outages?
Yeah, we've seen extensive damage. We've seen a lot of wires down. We've seen a lot of poles down, which obviously caused huge impacts to our network. Importantly, the safety advice to the community is please stay clear of those wires. Ensure you stay 10 metres away and assume that those wires are live. Obviously, our focus is to ensure the safety of the Tasmanian community, the safety of our staff and the safety of our emergency management partners.
Can you give any indication of when some of these customers will have their power back?
We are looking at probably significant delays. Again, I'd urge our customers to refer to our website. We may see significant delays up to the next 5 days, but we'll be working as hard as we can to restore power where we can.
And among those 37,000, how many hours have some of them been without power?
We have seen some customers without power for up to 2 days, and we're again prioritising those customers as quickly as we can.
The industrial action has been suspended, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's not impeding our response.
And are you able to shed any... Sorry, go ahead, Ben. You've got to apologise
Okay.
for that. Are you able to shed any light on how the phone network is going?
Yeah, we have seen some outages across the state. Obviously, that is impacting some of our customers in relation to phone reception. It does impact some of our staff. We're currently really relying on the Tasmania network, which is obviously the whole of government network, to ensure that we have communication within the field and throughout our emergency partners.
Do you know how many, cell towers are down or whatnot, or pieces of equipment are down?
I don't have that exact figure at the moment, sorry.
Cool, thank you. I think that's all. Alright, yep.
Sorry guys, give me 2 seconds.
Questions for me?
I'll just check my
Disc, I'm sorry.
Give me 2 seconds.
So I understand the Premier will be out later, but
Sorry, can you just wait for Barry?
I was...
Good to go?
Josh, go ahead.
No, I was just asking you to wait for Barry.
I was just going to say, I understand the Premier is going to be out later, but you're taking questions on other issues?
Yeah, I'll take a few. Obviously,
Yeah, great.
we'll
We'll start with
discuss this one.
Yeah, we'll start with the injuries probably. Can you shed a little bit more light on that and exactly who's been affected?
Yeah, so last night a couple of road crew workers were injured as they were doing some work to repair from storm damage. So as I mentioned, our hearts go out to them. I understand some of their injuries are quite severe, though not life-threatening. And it's a good reminder for all of us just the important work that they do and the risks that people are taking so that they can help others in our community at the moment. That's why when we say we really appreciate the Tasmanian community's patience, it's because the safety of our workers and our emergency services crews who are out there among the worst of it at the moment trying to help others are front of mind.
We've heard there's been some interruptions to cell phone communication. This is obviously a test also for the government radio network. How is that holding up?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the TasGRN is doing well, but look, I might look to our operational team if there's any further update you want to provide on the TasGRN. Yep, but I might say just generally as well, it's been a really important investment so that all of our land manager and emergency services crews are able to communicate across the one platform. Tes Networks is part of that, our SES, Fire, Police and others, and it's an important step forward, particularly as we're dealing with difficult events that require a large degree of coordination in remote areas.
Just on the North West Regional Hospital, how long did it take to move to a generator? Was there a period where the hospital had completely no power?
Look, I'm happy to follow up with colleagues to provide an update on that, but my understanding is that the generator power was kicked in as the electrical supply was disrupted, but that supply is back on now.
And are you confident that all major hospitals and district hospitals have the power that they need and the generators they need if they lose their main power?
Look, this is an evolving event, of course, so we may see further outages over coming hours and coming days, but there is backup supply available to these important facilities. Can I also, to the community, just reiterate that we need to prioritise particularly vulnerable cohorts of people and critical infrastructure as well. So, as mentioned, we've had power out to major hospitals. They are, of course, our highest priority. So when community members may be experiencing delay at their homes, we want to reiterate our thanks for your patience as we work through prioritising those important facilities.
Just checking, the North West Regional Hospital and which other major hospital had power outage?
Look, my understanding is that there have been district hospitals that have been affected, but the North West Regional Hospital is the main one of the three major hospitals.
Has there been any consideration about declaring, a disaster area or an emergency sort of declaration in the Derwent Valley?
Look, so we're continuing to work through this event, and of course we'll take advice from our emergency services leaders. Now, the Premier and myself have been in touch with federal colleagues regarding recovery assistance, and recovery assistance has already been made available to people in the Derwent Valley as well as people in the Central Highlands. Now, we'll be monitoring this evolving situation over coming days if there are any other areas that need to be prioritised in terms of disaster relief assistance. And we thank the federal government as well as our partners in local government for their assistance.
Yeah, we heard earlier that businesses continue to be affected by this. Does that mean that you're considering increasing the level of assistance to support those businesses?
Yeah, so the disaster arrangements that we have in this country have a range of different protocols that we step through as the emergency unfolds. That includes if we see increased flooding in certain areas and other damage. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. We've got obviously a range of assessments that we make, but we are noting that there are more businesses and households that are being affected by flooding as the water works its way through our catchments.
And for, just to clarify, what's the largest amount of financial assistance people can be eligible for?
So currently, under the declarations that have been made for the Derwent Valley and the Central Highlands, it's $250 for an individual and up to $1,000 for a family. And obviously, this is an unfolding event. It's still live, so we'll continue to make assessments around that.
And are you confident that we've learnt lessons from previous flood events around how to communicate with communities and prevent any loss of life?
That's right. We've seen significant improvements to the way that we respond to flood events in Tasmania after the tragedies of the 2016 flood. 2022 was an outstanding example of the learnings that we've seen in our emergency services around the way that we respond and coordinate together, and that was a very important test for us. So the Tasmanian community can be confident that our emergency services have the tools that they need and are well coordinated and ready to respond to this event. But of course, we also implore the community, please follow the instructions of emergency services and stay up to date as well. It's everyone's responsibility to ensure that the community is safe. At the moment, that includes right down to families and households making the right decisions, making informed decisions so that they can stay safe.
And I've kind of touched on this earlier, but if people can't access the Tas Alerts page, are you confident they can still keep up to date?
That's right. So ABC Local Radio is our national emergency broadcaster, and it's important that if you are unable to access telecommunications or power, that you have a battery radio available in your emergency pack.
Great. I can go to other issues now if that's okay.
Sure.
So the AEU is today talking about a surge in workers' compensation claims and says the number of teachers leaving within 5 years is up by 97%. How can the state government reduce those figures when it's expected there'll be cuts to the education sector in the budget?
Look, we're looking to increase our funding for schools, and we acknowledge the important work that our teachers do right across our community. They do such a phenomenal job teaching the next generation, and we acknowledge the sometimes difficult circumstances that can happen as well if they're dealing with children with some behavioural issues. But as part of the election campaign, we've made significant commitments in terms of further support for teachers that are working in hard to staff schools, and we acknowledge the amazing and important work that they do each and every day.
A teacher that stood alongside the AEU today talked about maybe introducing welfare officers for teachers who are suffering from mental injuries. Is that something you think the government would be open to considering?
Oh, we're always looking to see what more we can do to support our teachers, noting that the important work that they do, and sometimes in difficult circumstances as well.
Great. We heard a little bit more about the Northern Prison this morning, and groups including the Aboriginal Legal Service, I believe, have welcomed that. From your perspective as Minister, do you think that this is the right move for that community?
As far as the change with the Northern
Prison, yeah.
Yeah, so look, this is an important decision from the government, and we're looking to increase our investment into rehabilitation and the Risdon prison site, and that's important. We want to ensure that if people have done the wrong thing, that they're held to account, but that we don't see that kind of offending again in the future.
Cool. Thanks. Oh, school closures, sorry. Sorry, just going through a list of things. How many? Do we know how many schools were closed today?
Look, if
yeah,
I can pass over to the
yeah,
operations team
might
if you
have
like.
to. Sorry.
Yep. Or we can provide a further
Provide-
update
might
if that
be.
works. Yeah.
It's not
Yep.
as alert.
Cool. Thank
Yep.
you. Okay,
Great.
Great. I think
Thanks
that's
everybody.
everything.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.